But
Yeah.
I realized that as time goes on and you deal with that, you just double down on what you're saying. I got a point which I doubled down. It's not a matter of you can't understand. You can definitely try to understand. Like people need to get out of that thinking of they can't understand.
If you're a person that like is in a case in the US, for example, it helps to travel so that you can see that what you think is not normal is actually normal.
Normal.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, there's no such a thing as exotic. What is exotic is actually normal in some places.
Welcome to the Feminine Outliers Podcast, where we're about life and self discovery beyond borders. We're your hosts, Zelda Wasau,
And Cholwe Mandona.
and we're excited to have you here with us today. Welcome back. We are excited to be back recording. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed this episode because it's, as you can tell by the title, we're going to be talking about things to do with accents, attitude, and assumptions. I think people who have immigrated somewhere or are living somewhere different, or maybe are a different culture than where they are currently based, will have a lot of things to talk about in regards to this. So I'm hoping this is a fun, entertaining, and engaging topic. And it'll be nice to hear what you guys have to say in the comments once we are done with it. But for me, I think to get started, when I think about accents, attitude, and assumptions, the first thing that comes to mind, actually, when I come to think about it, is going back to college
Mm.
and Miami University of Ohio. So I think I might have said this at some point on the podcast, Chole. I'm not sure.
Mm.
But basically, I talked about how I would speak in British English because that's how
Oh, yes.
we were raised. Like in that's the type of English you speak in Kenya,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't realize the differences with American English until you actually come here, and then you start speaking it, and then it's very different, right? But then,
Yeah.
and personally, I find that Americans are not the best when it comes to dealing with differences. So they hear you say things in British English, and they're like, "Wait, huh?" And I'm like, "Wait, what kind of English is that?" Or Americans just it's like they can't wrap their head around the fact that it's like a different type of
Yeah.
English and stuff. You get those looks like, really? They're like, the way that's how you say it. I'm like, yeah, that's how we're taught. And it's funny because I've heard some people, some immigrants say, "Oh yeah, I speak the Queen's English." So the Americans feel like, "Yeah, I'm speaking the Queen's English." I've heard people say that
Yeah.
before. That was honestly the first thing that literally came to mind because it was honestly a funny struggle because writing
Mm.
was an issue because obviously you write
Yeah.
everything in British English. For example, color, COLOUR is
Yes.
COLOR, things like that. That was really a struggle because also I don't know if the professors would be, I don't know, I wouldn't say prudent or wise enough, but I don't know if they understand that you're
Mm.
writing things in British English and that can cause issues. But then just speaking every day, it's my classic example of, can you please open the boot of the car? And people are like, what's the
Oh,
boot of the
yes.
car? It's
The
the trunk of
trunk.
the
Yeah.
car.
Yeah.
That was literally my first experience just dealing with that. It was very
Mm.
interesting because, funny to say so, in Kenya, because the schools I went to in high school were international, like I went to a British system school and an American system school. We had people from all over. It was not unusual to have people with different accents. I never thought anything of it. I'm just like, it's fun. We all say things differently.
Yeah.
We do things differently. And then when you come to the US and it's frowned upon to say things or do things differently in a weird
Mm.
sense. But then because you speak British English also, it's not as big of a taboo, I would say, as me speaking something else.
Mm,
But that was just
yeah.
my initial introduction to this fun world of all of that. I don't know. What was your initial introduction to any
Well,
of this? It is a fun world
no,
because
I, no, it's no. That's a good phrase, fun world to use. The the idea of the spelling I can resonate with because I actually was enrolled in an international English class because first of all, they couldn't recognize that Zambia does speak like Zambians do speak English or English is the primary language. And I try to fight it to say, look, I'm actually speaking to you in English. Can I not be
right,
in this class? And can I not be in this class? But I couldn't get away with it. So I found myself in the international class for English. And it was basically a way to integrate international students into the wider American student community. And so it was a very interesting class, actually. But I remember my first essay, and I can't remember the topic, but anyway, I did it. I handed it over. I got it back, and it had a lot of redlining, and that was because of the spelling. The spellings were off because of the, as you said, the U in color. Traveling, it was double L instead of one L. And so, yeah, so I got dinged for that actually. And that was the first time where I think basically my laptop, like in Microsoft Word, when you put the settings on American English versus British English, that started to help me because it would, I just put the settings into American English and then it would help me correct the parts where I was not spelling it according to the American way. Um, so yeah, and the thing is that I also did get uh, there have been funny moments with uh, in terms of like the words I used. I think for me it
hmm,
wasn't even the accent, it was the words I used. Like cookies instead, like I used biscuits to mean cookies. So I guess I didn't pay attention to whether my accent was similar or not. Because I think I just carried this energy of I'm here, I'm present, I'm talking to you. And so if someone had said, "Oh, you sounded different," I probably wouldn't think too much about it. But it sounds like you were very observant about the accents and the differences in the accents.
I think
Yeah.
that's because I grew up with a lot of different people. So it's just, and for me, it was like in a very positive manner. Like I just found it so
Mm,
nice and intriguing. But I think the thing was that in America, it seemed a little bit more negative. It's like
mm.
for them, it's no, you don't say things like that. Or they correct you how you say it or stuff like that. But technically, how you're saying it is not wrong. It's just, it's right in another place. It's just, it's different
Yeah.
here.
Yes. Yes. There's this affinity to fit in because I guess there's no feedback you're getting, right? Because if people are, as you said, there's a sort of a question, especially when someone says, "Sorry, can you repeat that? I can't hear you." Like I'm guessing it gives you this sense of, okay, I need to do better with what I'm saying because this person can't hear me. Like those responses make you feel like, okay, so I'm not welcome to speak the way I can speak. If someone is, can you repeat that? Or I'm sorry, what did you say? Or I've seen that, and I, as you said, I think coming from English speaking countries already, that transition wasn't that hard, I have to say. But I know people with thicker accents or people whose primary language is not English could have heavier accents, and then people then are looking at them and being like, okay, I can't understand you. Can you do better? Can you speak my language? And that's the thing, right? It's not I want to hear you. Can you go slower? It's more, ah, like, just speak the way everybody else speaks, because my brain is hurting just trying to get what you're saying. I think maybe there's just an irritation, and that's why it feels negative, because it's the other person is not leaning in to say, hey, okay, just say it slower, and I will pay attention and I will listen for the words
Right.
and make things out. Yeah. And I've also noticed that, like, when people do miss out on like prepositions, because sometimes English is not their first language, they'll miss out on prepositions. And myself, I would try to make the connection that they're trying to say this. But if somebody doesn't even want to try and make that connection, it just doesn't feel as welcoming. And it's more,
Right.
yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. Or I don't understand what you're saying at the moment. So that's sad.
I think like to that, I think what I would, because I do get it when someone says a response like that, it throws you off and it makes you feel like automatically you feel like you need to try and be more understandable or be more not even eloquent. It's just you try to rephrase what you're saying so that they can understand it better.
Yeah.
And it makes you feel a little bit down, not down, but I need to change something about the way I speak. But
Yeah.
I realized that as time goes on and you deal with that, you just double down on what you're saying. I get to a point which I double down and then you will try to understand because you can try to understand.
Mm,
It's not a matter of you can't understand. You can definitely try to understand. Like people need to get out of that thinking of they can't understand. Because when I'm talking to someone who English is not their first language, and as you said, they miss out on things and you try to make the connection and you're not always there trying to be like, okay, I don't understand you, I don't do this, I don't understand. Like fine, if they say something that you don't understand because maybe the wording is very different or they maybe said something wrong and maybe in the wrong context or something, the way I ask them to explain a little bit further is different than the way you find here in America they try to like correct you. So I just learned how to double
mm,
down on what now I've got to
mm,
the point where I just double down and be like, no, you will get it. If you don't want to understand it, it's your problem. You because
mm.
like you technically shouldn't have. I don't think I'm that hard to understand. In my opinion, like I don't think I'm that
Yeah.
hard to understand. So you figure it out. And I do this particularly in the hospitals. Like when I'm dealing with the
Mm,
older patients, I'm like, you can figure it out.
yeah.
You can put your brain to work. You can figure it out.
You're like, yes, just use it. Just use that brain of yours. Like, you've got this. I know you've got this. Like, you're very smart. No, I help out my colleagues or anybody when I see that there's a translation or a misunderstanding. Like, I would step in and say, he's saying that, because sometimes the person wants to give up on what they're saying. As you said, they're like, okay, I've just repeated myself 3 times and this person is not getting it. So I find myself stepping in to the person who is trying to understand them, saying, this person is saying this. You are not getting away from this conversation because you are tired of thinking through of the words that they're saying. So like, as you said, you need to understand this person, because there's something about where when there's that loss in communication, to some extent there's almost this like loss of importance of the other, like this sense of significance. It's almost like all of a sudden, if it's somebody, and if it's someone from a different country, it would be like, oh, there was this guy, this dude who I couldn't get. It was just it that person becomes so random as like a random guy or a random woman that just was trying to ask, maybe let's say, for directions. Like,
Mhm.
we lose that sense of, no, this is a human being and they have a life story that we don't know nothing about, and all they were trying to do was ask for directions or ask a question or
Right.
point something to you. And we don't have this oh, let me get to know this person even more. It was already bad enough just trying to have the first initial conversation. I would just end it right now and move on. I will not engage any further. And I think that's where some people lose significance there quite easily.
I think like what you're saying goes hand in hand with assuming that people who don't speak English are not smart.
Mm, yeah,
Because it's
yeah,
that thing, like you're frustrated they don't speak English, so it's really a breakdown of communication, and you just, as you said, it becomes more irrelevant to you. But why is it? As you said, they are a human being who has a life and stuff like that. But it's also the thing of, oh, someone who doesn't speak English are not as smart. And I'm like, why? Why
mm,
do why is that the assumption based off of that?
mm,
Because there's so many different languages in this world. Yes,
mhm.
English is one of the more widely spoken languages. And I think because English is one of the more widely spoken languages in some of the world superpowers, as I said, some, not all, people assume, oh, you should speak English. If you don't speak English, then you're not smart. And those two have no correlation at all. But I've seen that kind of correlation
Right.
here in America. And granted, I don't deal with that because I speak English, but I have seen it happen to other people in a sense
Right.
that it's weird. Or if, or you have someone who English is a second or third language, and they speak it with a very, very heavy accent, and
Mhm.
it's an accent from a place that is not considered, I don't know, first world. Because if you have someone who is French and they speak English in a very particular manner, but because they're from France, it might seem a little bit more exotic and
Yeah.
nice and stuff. They might,
Yeah.
and like if you have a German speaking English, they might seem more like ooh la la kind of
Yeah.
vibe. But then you have an Indian speaking English with a very thick Indian accent. Or you have someone from a non-English speaking African country speaking
Mm.
English or something like that. It doesn't seem more it just seems like you are less
Yeah.
educated than the other person, and then
Mhm.
your accent is not taken in as well as someone else. The question
Mhm.
is, why is that?
Yeah. This goes back to our previous episode where we were talking about who's writing the narrative or whose narrative are we following? Like this sense of distrust when something is not like if a person is not English speaking or is in a way we can't like you can't relate to that person because they're not English speaking. And in fact, the other thing I would want to add to that is how you even speak English. If you're articulate is another one, which I'm
Mhm.
sure a lot of people, including myself, including you, and including a lot of listeners right now, if you're coming from the diaspora and you're in the western part of the world, I think most likely I want to say mostly the US, someone has probably commented saying, "You are so articulate. Like you speak well." And it's and think about that because then they had an assumption before you opened your mouth about how you were going to speak. So not only can you speak English, but your nouns and your verbs agree and your preposition is in the right place and you know when to just stop talking and you know how to like your tone, your pitch. It's just it's almost like wow, you are you and you're speaking like that. And I don't know whether there's a sense of relating, like the voice is I feel comforted by the voice, but why are you like this? Like oh, why are you a person of color? So are you why is your hair like that if you speak like that? Like so like I think there's this dissonance that like people experience in their own heads of I didn't expect you to speak like that because I associate this kind of tone or this sort of articulation with a certain group of people.
Mm.
And yeah. And so, like, I think I've heard some people say there's something about people of color that speak English really well, like a British Indian person or like a British like African person. There's something about because it's associated with, I don't know whether it's associated with Western people, but then they have adopted this accent and it's, oh, they're like exotic like all of a sudden because they how they look and how they speak is different, but it makes that good mix. Think of like Idris Alba, who is the British actor. Like all of a sudden it's just, oh, Idris just looks, the way he sounds and the way he is, just that combination just makes him like unique. And so there's something there about how we are making judgments of people.
I think what you're trying to say, but not trying to say, is that it's associated with whiteness. So
Mm.
if you're not white and you speak like that, you speak eloquently, it's wait, what? And it's like, huh? Why are you
Yeah.
surprised?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, because that's
Yes.
what I know a lot of Black British people get. Because again, the British accent is very much romanticized here in the US.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
they come in, they speak like that. It's wow. That's an accent that's very much welcomed in the US.
Yeah.
Very much.
And so imagine the combination of being truly smart and articulate because you actually went through an education system and then you have an accent. It's like you're holding so much power there. It means that literally you can ask for anything and someone will actually like pay attention to you and say, "Let me, yeah, okay, I will give you an opportunity to say what you want to say because you're just
Mm,
welcomed." Sometimes when we think of like, I don't know what you call that because that to me that's like the sound of like being able to relate, like relatability,
mhm,
because it's a maybe it's a different form of like bias. Um
mm.
it's a different form of bias. I know we always talk about skin color when it comes to racism or separating people because of the way they look, but have we even thought about discriminating people based on the way they sound?
That's
Um
definitely a thing. I don't
mm,
know, but I don't think we've thought as much into it as we should have, but I think that's definitely a thing.
yeah, that is, but oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say no because I've seen. This is just social media, okay? When I'm randomly going through social media, but I've seen a couple of Black American influencers and stuff saying how if you call, like, even if it's a job interview, but you sound very Black American, you're less likely to get the job than if you sound more less Black American because they assume if you're more
Mm,
articulate, you have a higher chance of getting the job than versus the other way. So that's definitely a thing. So, like, how you sound. And it's funny because we're talking about accents and stuff like that from a more global perspective, but it also
mhm,
exists just here in the US
mm,
with and how different groups of people speak, sound, and all that. Because and it's interesting. It's just that our viewpoint is more so from comparing it to where we're coming from, which is from outside. But then
mhm,
they have the same problems here because you've lived in Alabama.
mm.
You've lived in the
Yeah,
South, and you know how the
yeah,
people in the South talk. Like it
yeah.
amazes me, and I'm just like with the yes, ma'am, no,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Yes,
Yep.
and then my head. First of all, that makes me feel really old. But anyways, I
Ah,
remember it was like a whole like, wow. Like these people speak so differently than
mm,
people, example, in the Northeast. But even in the Northeast, there's differences and intonations and different things throughout the US. I'm not the best at
mhm,
picking it out, but I can certainly pick
mm,
out a Southern accent. And that
mm,
really amazes me. But also, I do know that in some cases, people might assume they're a little bit less educated
mm,
based on
mm,
how they sound. And I'm just like,
mm,
where did that come from? See, that's another assumption that's being tagged along.
mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's true. Th That's a good question. Are we conditioned to associate competency, professionalism with, as you said, the um like in the sense the Western, the whiteness sense of like our accents and voice versus vernacular, local, yeah, like dialects as well. Because yeah, we're not really just appreciating the person, we're associating it with something else. And yeah, that's a tough one, Zell. I don't know where that comes from, but it's something being aware of.
Hmm.
Yeah, because like I said earlier, people miss out on having a connection with others because of that. To think that
Hmm.
separates people from just understanding themselves even better by looking at life through a lens of another person. Like the number of rides I've had with Uber drivers who are from another country, and some of them, in some instances, just because life just happened, they were professionals in their home country, like doctors, engineers, but they found their way in this part of the world and they had to start off with riding, like driving like the Uber and trying to make ends meet. But
Hmm.
they, like when you talking to them, it's like, wow, this is what I used to do in my home country. I was this and this, and their level of knowledge is just, it's just so surprising because I guess surprising in the sense that you're like, wow, imagine if somebody was sitting in the Uber and was just like, "Ugh, some random Uber guy just taking me home," and not realizing like there's a whole story behind that. So we're not leaning in. We need to lean in and actually just ask questions and be curious.
But that's an interesting example. However, I think this is also where your extrovertedness comes into play. Because I know that everyone has a story or something behind their life. Like we all have our different stories, but I don't necessarily care about it. Like on my Uber drive, I just want to sit there in peaceful, quiet silence.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when people talk too much, OMG, I'm just because when I was going to my last trip to Turkey, when I was in the Uber to the airport into Philly, the lady, you would have loved her, kept talking and talking. I just enjoy some
Yeah.
silence. So I think that just depends.
Yeah.
But I understand where you're coming from in the sense that we shouldn't just we should remember that there's a story behind all of it, and this is a human being with a
Mm.
life and stuff like that. That's true.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean we have to talk to them, but as long
Mm.
as you're
Yeah.
respectful and stuff, respectful in general, I think that's the most important thing, which I
Mhm.
think tends to go down the drain for some people when they hear someone speak. It's like all of a suddenly they, I don't know, lose respect or something like that. I know sometimes some people are
Mhm.
also just simply curious, and I know I've gotten asked like before, "Hey, I know you have a. I've noticed the accent. Where are you from?" And I think for me, because my
Mm.
accent is not, I wouldn't say it's strong. It's not strong, but
Mm.
as I talk, and you can definitely tell that I'm not from here. But it's
Mm.
not like the most glaring, obvious accent. So I get to get that question a lot from patients, for example. They'll be like, "Oh, where are you from?"
Mm.
And depending on who I am talking to, okay, maybe my answer is not the it's not the kindest. I just tell them where I'm from doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
don't want to start talking about my story because simply because I'm trying
Mm.
to get out of that room. Like I'm trying to
Mm.
move on with my work. So I'm trying to reduce the
Mhm.
amount. But I do know some people take offense to that, which I mean, I'm
Mm.
sorry, but it's
Yeah.
because some people are simply just curious and they just want to know more. And they're like, huh. And there's that beautiful curiosity out there. But there's also those ones who are not curious, who are just like, why do you sound like that? And
Mm,
I think you can always tell by the energy and the vibe someone's giving, like which direction it's going. For me, either direction gets the same answer, unless I have
yeah.
time.
And my question would be why are they asking that question? Would they have asked the question if it was like a white American doctor who walked in? Um,
Uh, I
s-
think that's part of. I think that's part of it. Is because you're a young black female doctor, and they're probably like, and then you don't sound black American, so they're like, they just probably want to know where you're from.
mm, yeah. And I wonder, have you gotten in a situation where you've walked in, you haven't said anything, and do they have an assumption of what role you're playing in
Oh,
their
all the
life?
time.
Exactly.
All the time. A lot of them will assume I'm the nurse. And before I
Hmm.
say anything, then I'll be like, "Oh no, I'm not your nurse. I'm your doctor." Then they'll be like, "Oh," and I'm like, "Yeah," like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's some who you even introduce yourself as doctor,
Mm,
and they keep on saying nurse.
mm.
Yeah. Okay, that's a story for another day.
That's
So,
another story.
but those ones I
Yeah.
still correct. I correct them. I'll be like, "Nope, it's
Hmm.
doctor," and I'll correct it until it gets into your head, so that you can feel uncomfortable, and I'll do it
Hmm.
again. But anyways, yeah.
No, and I the reason I'm asking these questions is because it's so powerful how without even mentioning anything about yourself, literally, you just walk in and there's already this thinking like this chat GPT like ready to go idea and profile of who you are. And
Mm,
even can you imagine even like the energy of okay, if you are the nurse and if they're in their head they're like the nurse looks like this, maybe they're about to tell you like, "Oh, I don't like my water. I don't like my food." That sense of like now they're going to pull depending on how they feel or what they have sensed from you. Or no, not sensed from you, but what they're looking at in yeah, they are just like I'm going to treat this person like this. And then if another person walked in and was different, let's say a white American doctor, they might have a different attitude and be like, "All right, doc." I don't know how they approach it, but they might be softer, kinder. I don't know. Maybe vice versa. Who knows? But that's so powerful, though, that your narrative is written before you can even speak it. And
and going back to this whole accents, how you sound kind of thing. For example, when I'm calling to transfer a patient,
mm,
I do realize that I sound young and I'm a female. So
mm,
when you get the attending on the other side of the whichever hospital you, particularly if you're doing trying to transfer to a surgery service, which most of the times they're male attendings, they assume you're the resident. And I'm like, no, I am the attending. And they're like, oh, and it changes everything. Like even how they continue addressing you and stuff like that. They're like, oh, so I didn't realize this and that. There's one time I dealt with someone who's a bit rude. And I think he realized it. And so afterwards, he was like, oh, don't worry, I'll keep you up to date with what's happening with the patient. After that, he was so nice because he
yeah,
assumed I was either a medical student or a resident. He didn't realize that I was the attending because I was a
yeah,
female and I sounded young. And I
yeah,
have heard
mm,
other of my female colleagues deal with the same issue, in which it's like these older male attendings just don't. It's like I don't know, they can't wrap their head around it. But and it's usually when they figure it out, it's like they have to do damage control
mm,
because they're like, oh my goodness, we're gonna be in hot water if we don't do damage control. Because it's
mm,
like
yeah.
because they just assume based on how you sound.
Yeah, that's funny, and then the attitude changes
Hmm. It
once they
changes so hard.
yeah, once they discover what's really going on. I honestly this exhausted me. I want to say actually this. To begin with, it didn't, because when I came to the US, I had Coming to America, Eddie Murphy
You were
main character
in
vibes.
Nirvana. You were
Yes.
totally clueless to what was happening.
I totally clueless. And because I had this like African empathy, the humility. So if someone said something like if someone was just like, "Hey, yeah, what are you doing here?" I would just be like, "Hey, I'm," like in your case, I would say, "I'm the doctor. I'm the doctor." And I would just like show up with a smile, and I wouldn't see like, why are they questioning me? I'll just be so excited. Like in my mind, it would be like, someone is talking to me. I am the doctor. And I would just go on to explain. If it was something to do with my hair, I'll be like, yes, so in Africa or in Zambia, this is what we do. I would go on and on. And I think they probably were not expecting me to go into these like explanations where like the conversation was only supposed to be for 1 minute or 30 seconds. But then I would go on and talk about where I'm from and why we do what we do. And I think in a way, obviously, I didn't feel it, but over time, I started to. When I settled into my work, I started to feel it. And then I started to get exhausted because it was like, I'm now aware of it. I know why you're asking, or like the change in the attitude and just the demeanor. Like that used to be exhaust me because I was like, you're not seeing me for who I am. You have a narrative of who I am. And when I started to recognize it, I realized I needed to expand my capacity for it, to not, because I couldn't go back to the Eddie Murphy version because once you hit the once you realize the truth, or you're hit with the truth, you can't really go back, because now I have a choice of how I'm going to respond. And so that's where I was like, oh, I need more capacity to be able to do my job, but not also get impacted, because that is the hard part. Because I still get it. Like, I see it in people's faces when they hear me speak and they're trying to like process how that is matching with my skin color. It's going through their heads, but then I just give them time to settle into their body and be like, okay, anyway, now that you maybe settled, let's start working. Let's get back to business. Um, because it takes capacity. And honestly, this is one thing I would say, like if someone said, what's the difference with working in the diaspora versus maybe working from home? Because like where we're coming from homogeneous cultures. So nobody's really thinking that much about their skin color, their accents. They're just doing their job. And then in this part of the world, you have an extra thing, an extra layer you need to deal with. And I'm just like, I don't want it to impact me, so I have to create this capacity. And I know people might have different ways of combating it, and some people might have what I consider combative strategies, like where it's, no, I'll put them in their place. But then I'm like, okay, so how much energy and time should I do that? Like, how often should I be putting them in their place? That's my question.
I don't I don't have that combative strategy either,
Mm,
but I don't have a passive strategy either. For me, my strategy is simply just dole it back at them in a very nice, calm, cool, collected manner that makes them
mm,
think that how dumb are we? That's my strategy. Because you tell
mm,
me something and I'll dole it right back and be like, really? And in a really
mm.
nice way. And you will think about it hard because you'll realize I should not have said that. Because I'll just be
Yeah.
like, why do you say that? It's like the example I told you before, how like when the elderly patient I had was like, oh, you don't look like a doctor. So I asked her very calmly, what does a doctor look like? And she was stammering on her words, trying to figure out what a doctor looks like. And then when I left the room, and she didn't realize I still could hear what she was saying, she told the nurse, who was also Caucasian and blonde, was like, oh, I did not mean to offend. I didn't really mean to do that. I was not trying to be mean or rude or anything like that. She was telling the nurse that. But you see, that made her
Mm,
think. So she's not going to be look at someone who she thinks is not a doctor based on her 80 years of life And she'll next time she'll think through it twice. That's what I do. And I doll it out really nicely in a very calm manner. And I'll be like, why are you thinking that? And then
Mm,
think about it.
mm,
That's what I
mm.
do. Because beforehand,
Yeah,
I used to just keep quiet. Like, you just keep quiet and be like,
yeah,
leave in the awkwardness. And I'm like, no, no, no. I'm going to throw the awkwardness back at you in a very nice, calm,
yeah,
cool, and collected manner that will make you feel like I will never do that again.
yeah. I feel like that's a strategy that's in the middle. It's in the middle where you're not living in this rhetoric of it's us versus them. Like you're just saying, I will continue doing my job. I'll continue living my best life. But when it comes up, I will address it right there and then. Because if you think about it, like in the past, and I think I've done this as well, where the thing happens and then you go back home and speak to your friends and family about it because you are like, you feel a sense of being powerless because you didn't say anything.
Mm.
And then now to console yourself and to regulate your nervous system, you're like, I need to talk to my parents. I need to talk to my friends who can relate. And then over time, your identity feels smaller because now you're giving more power to that person and you're just not yourself. And I think that's why we're talking about this today, right? Is because these ideas of I'm different from these other people, and because I'm different, it means I'm less powerful. But that's not true at all. Like, you can hold yourself in these spaces, but you do have to have energy to deal with the situation at hand, as opposed to bringing back that negative energy into yourself. Because then over time, you're just like, I don't feel welcome. I don't feel loved. I don't feel like I need to be here. Maybe I need to move countries or I need to do this. When you're ready to be done with that environment, you leave. But in the meantime, you don't need to lose your power over it. I guess that's what I'm saying.
I think it's just, as you said, live your best life and then do with it as you can. Because that way you don't limit yourself.
Yeah.
Because I think it's easier said than done. And I think it's
Yeah.
easier for us who did not grow up in these countries. Because
Mm.
you grew up in Zambia having a really healthy sense of self. You
Self.
just
Yeah.
Joey Madonna in Zambia,
Yeah.
moving, doing your
Yep.
life and stuff. Like, you don't
Yeah.
have to
Yep.
think about some of this extra stuff. And also because you did not grow up in a poor home.
Mm.
So you didn't grow up lacking. So you didn't grow up like with other issues. You just had like in your head, you're like, you just had a normal life. That actually
Mm.
helps you, I think, when you come abroad because you just have this healthy sense of self and you just move through life. Yeah, I belong here just the same way any of you belong here, which throws people
Right.
off.
Mm.
It throws
Yeah.
people off, but it also
Yes.
gets them thinking. And also, then when you speak and they start to realize you're not even from here, it's even wow, how they
Yeah.
act like that. But it's actually a very beautiful thing to have. And it's also protective in
Mhm.
its own kind of way because you're not
Yes.
there thinking about every single thing that could possibly happen. You're just like moving through life. So, in a sense, it's actually a blessing because we have
Mhm.
a better, it's a more, I think it's a healthier outlook. It's less negative outlook on life.
No, that is very helpful. But I guess it helps to also then travel if you're in an environment that is constantly like if you're a person that like is in a case in the US, for example, it helps to travel so that you can see that what you think is not normal is actually normal.
Normal.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, there's no such a thing as exotic. What is exotic is actually normal in some places. And yeah, like you don't, yeah, so you stop questioning the difference instead of, and just embrace it. And so it's just what it is. And that's the thing, that's the beauty about it. Um, and that's what's so funny about these things is because it's almost like a mind twist because your mind is signaling to you difference, but Really? No. Like I yes, there's like physical difference, but it's not like you're in danger or anything. It's just difference. And if you can go past it, you can then experience another world, another person, and just like that just surprises me. And I guess that's why we're the feminine outliers, because we're like we're wanting to expand people's minds. Like things are just normal. Like you just need to travel and see it for yourself.
Honestly, but like, I feel like human beings just don't like difference. They don't know how to handle difference. That's just one thing. And because it seems like it goes with the mantra agree to disagree. So, like with difference, you have to agree that someone's different and it's okay.
Mm,
But
mhm,
human beings' minds, people just can't seem to wrap their head around it. It's the same
mhm,
fashion in which I think human beings in general don't like change, even though change is one of the most constant, one of the most guaranteed things in life, that things
mm,
just keep on changing. But
yeah,
people don't think about it like that. So people, anything that's different or that causes sudden change or shift is met with more resistance than curiosity, because it means you have to expand your mind and actually think more and just be like,
mhm,
huh, wait, so I thought this all along, but it actually could be like this, or this is the thing. And human beings don't have the capacity to do that in general, if depending on how where you grew up. Because for some of
mhm,
us, it's I have zero problem with change. I have zero problem with differences because I'm so used to it that
mhm,
I'm just like, bring it on. But that's because I also grew up getting used to that. But people who
yeah,
grew up in very monotone places, very isolated kind of way of growing up and stuff, might not have the same capacity to deal with it because they're not used to it. It doesn't mean they can't
mhm,
gain the capacity to deal with it. But again,
mhm,
it just means getting out of your comfort zone. Who do people are getting out of the comfort zones? No. So they
mm,
try to fit you into their
no,
comfort zone instead of
zone,
getting
yeah,
out of their comfort
mhm,
zone. So
exactly, yeah, yeah,
it is what
no,
it is.
it is what it is. Wow, I
But
love this. What's that?
we'll keep working to change it and
Yes,
make it better.
we will. We will. We're here. We're doing it. We're doing it. Embrace difference. Outliers embrace difference.
We have come to the end of this episode. We are on all the major podcast platforms, guys. So, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, you name it, you can find us there. So, please go watch us, listen to us, like, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please leave us comments. Let us know, what are your experiences with accents and assumptions wherever you are. We would love to hear what you guys have to say and would love
Hmm.
to have more of a discussion with that. You can also reach us via the femineoutliers@gmail.com. We are open to hearing more from you guys over there, working more with people, and getting more collaborations. So until next time, guys, have fun, live large, and don't be afraid to be an outlier. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.